The stale air of the courtroom, usually thick with the scent of legal paper and nervous sweat, now vibrated with a different kind of tension, the triumphant arrogance of three men who believed themselves untouchable. Mike Reynolds, Greg Carter, and Tom Willis, uniformed officers of the law, leaned back in their chairs with the casual confidence of kings observing their dominion. Laughter, low and self-satisfied, rippled from their corner, a stark contrast to the hushed resentment emanating from the other side of the aisle. The gavel's sharp rap cut through the nascent murmurs. "Case dismissed," the judge intoned, his voice devoid of emotion, a mere instrument in a predetermined symphony. A cheer, raw and immediate, erupted from the officer's supporters. Mike clapped Greg on the back, a wide, predatory grin stretching his lips. "Another day, another win," he drawled, his voice thick with smug satisfaction. Greg chuckled, a low, guttural sound that seemed to mock the very concept of justice. "They really thought they could take us down." Tom, leaner and with a restless energy, shook his head, a mirthless laugh escaping him. "Man, I love this job." For months, these three had operated under a cloud of suspicion, an open secret whispered in the city's shadowed corners. They were under investigation, a mere formality, as everyone knew, for a litany of heinous offenses: racial profiling that stripped citizens of their dignity, excessive force that left bodies bruised and spirits broken, and the cynical, calculated planting of evidence on innocent black citizens, transforming their lives into legal battlegrounds overnight. But, as always, their reach extended far beyond the precinct walls. Their connections, deep-seated and influential, embedded in the very fabric of the city's power structure, ensured that every accusation withered, every case crumbled, long before it could ever approach the sanctity of a fair verdict. Key witnesses, their initial bravery curdled by intimidation and fear, recanted their statements or simply vanished into the urban sprawl. Crucial footage, damning and undeniable, was accidentally lost, vanishing into the digital ether of a system designed to protect its own. And just like that, with the ease of a practiced illusionist, they walked free, their reputations, if not entirely unsullied, certainly unblemished enough to continue their reign of terror. As they rose to leave, the officers' triumphant swagger, filling the suddenly cramped space, the courtroom doors swung open with a soft sigh, as if the air itself was yielding to an unforeseen presence. A man stepped in, his presence commanding, a sudden gravity in the room. He was black, impeccably dressed in a dark suit that spoke of quiet power and meticulous attention to detail. His sharp brown eyes, intelligent and piercing, swept across the room, missing nothing. A neatly trimmed beard framed a strong jawline, lending an air of authority, and his confidence was a tangible aura, impossible to ignore, demanding respect without a single spoken word. The judge, who had just delivered the verdict of their freedom, cleared his throat, a small, almost imperceptible sound in the suddenly hushed courtroom. "Before we end today's session, I have an announcement." The room quieted further, a collective intake of breath. "As of today," the judge continued, his voice gaining a newfound solemnity, "the city has appointed a new chief of police. Please welcome Chief Jamal Brooks." Mike, Greg, and Tom froze. The triumphant smiles on their faces curdled into expressions of unadulterated horror. Their celebration, so loud and self-congratulatory moments before, dissolved into a silent scream. Jamal Brooks. The name echoed in their minds, a chilling phantom from their past. The same black man they had once falsely arrested, his dignity stripped by their casual cruelty. his pleas met with their mocking laughter, treated like dirt beneath. Their polished boots was now their boss, their commanding officer, the man who held their fates in his hands. Jamal stepped forward, his gaze unwavering, meeting theirs with an unsettling calm. His voice, steady and resonant, cut through the sudden suffocating silence. "Gentlemen, I look forward to working with you." Mike's throat went dry, a sudden choking sensation. Greg shifted uncomfortably, his usual bravado melting like snow in the sun. Tom, his face pale, clenched his fists, the knuckles white. The party was unequivocally over. The next morning dawned with a sense of foreboding that permeated the very bricks of the precinct. Mike, Greg, and Tom arrived with heavy, dragging steps, their usual arrogant swagger replaced by a palpable dread. The atmosphere within the department was palpably different, a quiet hum of anticipation and unease. Everyone had heard the news, whispered through hushed phone calls, confirmed by terse emails, the shock rippling through the ranks. Jamal Brooks was now chief, and the word on the street, amplified by the silent tension in the air, was that he had plans. Big plans. As they entered the main hall, officers stood at attention, their usual casual demeanor replaced by a rigid respect as they greeted their new leader. Jamal stood at the front of the room, hands clasped behind his back, impeccably dressed, in a crisp, dark uniform. His badge, newly polished and gleaming, caught the fluorescent lights above, a beacon of change. His presence alone was enough to send a clear, unequivocal message. Things were about to change. Drastically. Fundamentally. Reynolds, Carter, Willis. The names sliced through the quiet, crisp and sharp. The three officers flinched, a collective shiver running down their spines. Jamal gestured for them to step forward. They hesitated, their feet seemingly glued to the polished floor, their usual bravado now a forgotten memory. Slowly, reluctantly, they walked towards him, each step heavy with the weight of their past transgressions. Greg, ever the smoothest talker, forced a brittle smile. "Chief Brooks, it's great to have you here." Jamal tilted his head slightly, his eyes holding a disarming directness that made Greg's forced smile falter. "Is it?" he asked, the single word hanging in the air, a loaded question. Mike cleared his throat, a nervous habit. "Absolutely. We're ready to serve under your leadership." Jamal said nothing in response to their pathetic attempts at conciliation. Instead, with a deliberate, almost theatrical slowness, he placed a thick folder on the table directly in front of them. It was a mundane object, a simple manila folder, but its contents were anything but. Inside were their files. Every single complaint, every whispered accusation, every corrupt act they had ever committed over the years, meticulously documented, painstakingly gathered. Evidence that had been buried, deemed lost, or simply ignored by the old guard, was now exposed, laid bare for all to see. Tom's hands, usually so steady, turned clammy, a sudden chill spreading through his body. "Chief, listen," Tom began, his voice a desperate plea. "Save it." Jamal's voice, though not raised, was sharp, cutting through the thin veneer of their excuses. "You've abused your power for too long." Greg wiped a bead of sweat from his forehead, his composure finally cracking. "Chief, we were just following." Jamal's eyes darkened, a flash of righteous anger flickering within their depths. "You weren't following the law. You were following corruption, greed, and racism." His voice dropped, gaining a quiet intensity, That commanded absolute attention. But today, that ends. The other officers in the room watched in stunned silence, their faces a mix of emotions. Some gazed at the scene with grim satisfaction, a quiet vindication for years of hidden frustrations. Others looked on with shock, unable to comprehend the swift, decisive nature of the upheaval. Jamal folded his arms, his posture radiating unshakable authority. Effective immediately. You're all suspended pending an internal investigation. Mike's jaw dropped, his mind struggling to process the words. Suspended? He choked out, disbelief, warring with terror. Jamal nodded, his gaze unwavering. This department will no longer protect criminals in uniform. And you three, you're done. The weight of those words hit them like a physical blow, a ton of bricks crushing their carefully constructed world of impunity. The very system they had so brazenly abused, the system they believed would forever protect them, was now turning against them, a hungry predator devouring its own. 2 weeks later, the entire city was buzzing with an electrifying energy. Jamal Brooks wasn't just making empty promises, dispensing platitudes from a lofty office. He was a force of nature, systematically tearing down the old, corrupt system, brick by corroded brick, and building something better, something worthy of public trust. The internal investigation, spearheaded by Jamal's relentless pursuit of truth, revealed everything. Reports of excessive force, once dismissed as minor infractions, now stood exposed as brutal assaults. False arrests, designed to intimidate and control, were now recognized as deliberate acts of malice. Illegal searches, violations of fundamental rights, were brought into the light. Even stolen money from evidence lockers, long suspected but never proven, was finally traced back to its illicit origins. Witnesses who had once lived in paralyzing fear of speaking up, their voices silenced by threats and intimidation, finally found their courage. They came forward, one by one, a torrent of truth that could no longer be contained. The city, long suffering under the shadow of corruption, had had enough. Mike, Greg, and Tom were arrested. The irony was brutal, almost poetic. They were dragged, their faces pale with shock and despair, into the very same courtroom where they had once celebrated their cynical victories, where their arrogance had known no bounds. But this time, there were no high fives, no smug grins, no easy escape routes. The air was thick with anticipation, but it was the anticipation of justice, not of their usual triumph. The prosecutor stood tall, his voice resonating with a quiet authority as he read out the charges, each word a hammer blow against their fallen empires. Officer Reynolds, Officer Carter, Officer Willis, you are charged with misconduct, abuse of power, falsifying evidence, and multiple counts of racial discrimination. The courtroom was packed to capacity, every seat filled, every space claimed. Journalists scribbled furiously, their pens scratching across notepads, eager to capture every detail of this momentous shift. Protesters, their faces grim but hopeful, sat in the back, a silent vigil, waiting for the scales of justice to finally balance. The judge, no longer under their control, his demeanor stern and unyielding, fixed his gaze upon the 3 disgraced officers. How do you plead? Mike swallowed hard, his usual swagger replaced by a visible tremor. Not guilty, he rasped, the Maggie, words devoid of conviction. Greg's hands trembled visibly, his eyes darting wildly. This is a setup. The prosecutor cut him off, his voice sharp and dismissive. We have video footage, sworn statements, and forensic evidence. The truth is clear. The jury deliberated for a remarkably short period, only an hour. When they returned, the foreman, a woman with quiet dignity, spoke with an unwavering confidence that echoed through the silent room. Guilty. The courtroom erupted. Cheers filled the air, a collective roar of relief and triumph. People hugged strangers, clapped each other on the back, and some even shed tears, their faces streaked with the raw emotion of a long-awaited victory. Finally, after years of blatant disregard for the law, justice had been served. The officers were handcuffed, their hands bound behind their backs, and led away, their faces a mixture of disbelief, anger, and utter defeat. As they were being led out, Greg turned his head, his eyes burning with resentment, searching for Jamal. "You set us up!" he spat, his voice laced with venom. Jamal's lips curled into a faint, almost imperceptible smirk. "No," he corrected, his voice calm and even. "You set yourselves up. I just let the truth come out." Mike, his face contorted in a sneer, hurled a final desperate threat. "Enjoy it while you can. We'll be back." Jamal's gaze was unwavering, his composure absolute. "No, you won't." The door slammed shut behind them, a resounding thud that echoed through the liberated courtroom. The reign of corruption was over, and Chief Jamal Brooks, the once wronged, now the protector, stood ready to usher in a new era of integrity for the city's police force.